Hi there, it's Joe Dolce. I'm going to show you my technique for making sourdough bread. Don't get confused with the math. A lot of these teaching videos give you too many numbers, so it's a very simple formula here. I use baker's measurements, which means for every 1,000 grams of flour, either use 800 or 700 mils of water. The more water, the more air, the more bubbles, but also harder it is to keep a shape. So I like about 75% water. Okay, so for this one I'm going to use half. So I'm using 500 grams of flour and approximately 390 mils of water. And then I add 4 heaping tablespoons of starter and approximately 1 teaspoon of salt. Never add salt to your starter. Starter's been sitting there on the bench for a while, so I'm stirring it up so that it all gets blended together. And then I'm going to put 4 heaping tablespoons of starter into the water and mix it up thoroughly. Like I said, you can vary these ratios depending on how you want to, but the thing is you will eventually find your own combination of things that work to give you what you really like to eat. That's the main thing. It doesn't matter, what's right. It matters what you like to eat. What I'm doing over here, see, I'm refeeding my starter, which means what's ever left in my jar, I put a bit more flour in it, let's say 3/4 of a cup, and stir it up. Never put salt in your starter, right? Save the salt for the bread. Okay, so put a little water in. Notice I'm not measuring anything. It doesn't matter, right? What matters is you just get it to a nice consistency. You will learn by trial and error what works best. So I'm stirring up the water and the flour into what's left of the starter. And what I do is I use this rubber band. See, I put it wherever the level is. And that way I can tell the next day or so whether it's actually rising or not. If it doesn't move anything, I know the starter is pretty much dead. Okay, so now I'm mixing the water with the flour and the starch all together in here. And I'm going to add some salt here. Now's when you add the salt. So I put in here, well, about a teaspoon. Okay, teaspoon will do. Depends how salty you want. It's like salted butter and unsalted butter. The more salt, the more salty your bread is. But you can add the salt by using salted butter or bromide. And then this is what's called a very rough kind of knead. And then now what I'm doing is I'm getting in there with my dry hand and I'm pulling it together. You notice it's still a bit flaky and floury, and I'm not looking for a real smooth dough here. What I'm looking for is just something that holds together, right? Because when you let it rise for as long as we let it rise, which is like almost a day, it's going to absorb all that loose flour. Okay, so just like pound it together a bit, stretch it, just, no big deal. Don't worry about it. Just get it in there, and this is the first step. And I do this the night before. Okay, and cover it. Here's what it looks like. Here it's covered, right? And then about 15 minutes later or so, it's not rocket science, trust me, you can do it at half an hour later, whatever. Stretch it a bit. Okay, so what I do then is I pull it from one side all the way up, and then fold it over on itself, and then go grab the other side, do the same thing, and do it like in a square. Then grab the edges and pull that up, Just one good stretch, no big deal. Fold it over on top. See, you're starting to make a little package here. Don't worry about perfect here. Perfect doesn't matter in this. If you get the technique right, it'll always come out great. And different, which makes it really interesting. Okay, now I've got like 4 little stretches here. Now I'm going to do this twice before I go to bed. Like so, maybe a half hour later, an hour later, after watching a video, come back, do it again. Now this is the next morning. Now notice the starter that was down by that blue line was tripled in volume. Now here's the way I prepare my, what's called a banneton, but I just use a bowl. Oil up a bowl, and then put some baking paper on it. And what I do is I just grab a smaller bowl, push it in, and that basically creates pushes it in and creates a shape. Okay, now remember this is the next morning, so it's been rising all night. So I take my my dough that's been rising all night and put it onto a floured surface. Once again, we're not doing any real serious kneading here, okay? This is just stretching. So pull it up again, fold it that way, go to the other side, do that way. Once again, doing our box, do it this way. You like my pajamas? I don't even wash my face before this. I just like get started. Okay, you grab this lump here and put it in the banneton or the bowl. See? Don't worry if it's ugly. It'll be beautiful later. It's an ugly duckling. Okay, so we cover it and let it rest. Now I've gone to the market at say 5 in the morning. Come back around 1. That means it's been rising another 9 hours between the time I left. So now what I do is I preheat the oven for about 20 minutes at the hottest temperature. I put in a Dutch oven and a lid. After 20 minutes, take it out. It's really hot. Be careful. Don't burn yourself. Use really heavy tea towels. Now I take my risen dough, and this has been rising for quite a while. Remember from last night we started. Lift it with the baking paper. See? No big deal here. Now this particular technique, I just invented this. You want to put a little pattern on it. So I've got an old salad spinner that I had. See, it makes a nice pattern. And you just set whatever you want to do. You can use anything really. Put it on top of the bread and kind of like sift a bit of flour on it. And what this is going to do is make a nice little design on the top of the bread. See those circles? Isn't that great? Now I take you could use a razor blade, but I just use a simple old pizza cutter. And I'm going to put 3 slashes. I'm going to put 2 on the edges, thin ones, and I'm going to put a deep one right in the middle. I'll say these 3 different times to get that in, because what I want to do is create a split in the middle, but a bit of a design on the outside. Now, put some water and grab your very hot lid. The water helps create a tight crust on top, okay? Put the lid on and lift it carefully. Don't burn yourself into the oven. Let it set in there for 20 minutes. Set your phone or something for 20 minutes. Don't forget about it. When it goes off, come back, have a look, lift the lid off, and there you'll see. See, it's starting to go. It's got no brown on top yet, but it's definitely rising. Leave the lid off, put it back in for another 20 minutes. Come back, and now we're talking. This is what happens in the final 20 minutes. You start to get your color. And notice the split in the middle, right? And the little side splits in the pattern. Everything's looking great. Okay, take it out of the oven. Be careful. Lift it out as carefully as you can and put it onto some kind of rack. You don't want it sitting in that hot pan and cooking more. You want it to get some air now. Lift it onto a rack. That's it. You can try it. It'll be really hard on top and soft in the center. Okay.